you obviously showed up. You said you showed up because you like to show up to this stuff, but I mean, you had a scenario where it may or may not work. Yours is not a straight real estate play in this, right? It's
Right.
sort of it might be more complex, but do you want to just take like a few minutes and kind of explain where your potential loophole is, or your pitfall, where you
Well,
think it might be?
the pitfall, I could understand, we're talking about using assets in a certain way, could disallow the tax-free benefit at the end. That's what we talked about in our little meeting
Mhm.
when we had that, last week. And, one of the things I just wanted to confirm, which assets we could use, because I'm not limited to any one asset. I just look for assets that are income producing. And then you know how much income you're getting, and then you can plan to keep building it over time. Or, I found, insurance, it's not normally considered an investment, it's insurance. And because of that, it means that it doesn't go down and up. That's kind of the test. Does it go up and down in value? And the answer is it stays the same or it grows.
So
So
let's do a quick exercise here. Let's start at the basics, right? So this is have you ever seen this, Shawn? This is the OZ cheat sheet that
I've seen it.
puts out. Okay. So I just want to identify where you fit into this structure, right? Your concept fits into this structure. So you're not necessarily talking about starting your own fund and your own project, are you? You're talking about helping other people who already have a fund set up, correct?
Yes, because
Now,
basically the strategy that I put forth is I can grow money that you're going to pay for legal. It doesn't matter what it is. You just run it through the design, and then you cover the expense, and then you get the benefit from just flowing money through the income producing assets to then pay for whatever you're going to pay for in this process.
so it sounds to me like you're actually going to try to cater to the QOZB level, right? Because this is where you have assets that are growing potentially, right? Now, this is another complex one with a disclaimer, right? That, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a CPA, but this is the important thing. These are the tests I was talking about, right? So you've got the gross income test. These are all or tests. So you got to hit one or the other or the other or the other or the other. Not necessarily so concerned with your model there, but this is the piece right here. These are all and tests. So you have to, as a QOZB, hit all of these tests. All right. So 70% of tangible assets must be in the QOZB property. All right. Not necessarily concerned with that one for you. 50% of gross income come from a trade within an OZ. Again, not necessarily your wheelhouse, right? At least 40% of intangible property utilized within the OZ. Maybe not so much, but this is number 4 is the one where I would really want to dig into it. And I don't know if anyone here has any experience with this or has dabbled, but the whole goal of this was to set it so that you couldn't stock trade, you couldn't use this as a place to harbor growth of a portfolio in the way that you might be talking about, right? Because ultimately the value in the QOZB isn't. I mean, it's great that it would generate revenue over the course of 10 years. In fact, in real estate, that's great, right? It's you can actually hold that real estate till 2047, right? Just if it's income producing and it continues to create value or appreciate in value, like hold it longer if you can, right? But this is the part, and maybe I'd be happy to sit here and talk through this a little bit as much as we can. If you have a big fund, then this is where your strategy might come into play, right? Like you might have to pick really, really big QOZBs to support, because 5% of a big number could be a big number, right? Where a smaller fund is 5% of $100,000 fund, it's not going to be a whole lot in that QOZB, right? Does that make sense? Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yes, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah. So non-qualified cash, stocks, bonds, annuities, partnership interests, equity, so those are all things that would be this 5%. So you can't have more than 5% in a QOZB be cash, stocks, right? Like, and so there's a reason for this. And it makes sense when you come back to the spirit of the incentive as well, right? Like, again, it's not a design for harboring this type of capital, right? And then there's the sim business thing, which, you know, is neither here nor there, I guess, in this conversation. But have you seen this before, and or is this helpful in seeing
This is
this?
helpful because it brackets in, you know, what we're trying to work within. It gives us our boundaries. You know, just, you know, I just would like to clarify, you know, insurance, it doesn't fall in, it's not an annuity, it's not, you know, it grows internally. You know, if you use, you know, the right kind of insurance, you can get dividends and, you know, and then contractual rates of return that are just part of owning it, you know, over time. You know, basically the cash value has to equal the death benefit. So they have to put something in there to keep it on that schedule. But normally, you know, with insurance, they see it as an asset. If I'm going to loan you money, how am I going to get my money back if something happens to you? So they allow the person to buy an insurance policy to cover the loan, or, you know, what they're, you know, trying to use money for. And so
I
I
see.
don't know
So
that I fall out under that category as much if you use an
gotcha.
insurance. I can use other income producing asset, but I specifically chose it because of that reason.
Interesting. I got you. So you're talking about setting up an insurance policy inside of the company that could grow in addition to whatever the day-to-day operations of the business are.
Correct. You could take the money the day to day, move it through the system. It's growing, and you get more coverage every time you do that.
Well, even better if you did it in Puerto Rico, and then you would be qualifying all these other tests as well, potentially.
Well, I'm
right?
up for that too.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I mean, I would say that my next recommendation for you, Shawn, is to take this to the compliance zone and let those guys hammer through it. Because
if we could figure it out, it would be a good thing for people, you know, outside of, you know, even doing it one of these projects. Everybody has expenses in their life, you know, their house payment, car payments. It works for those things just as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's my recommendation or diagnosis here. I don't know if anybody else has any insights or chime in that they want to include. Nita, I can see you. I love it because I see you nodding your head, but even though you're on mute.
Well, yes. It was a sidebar. But this is great. And what I would like to do actually is start with number 5 and go, no, it's not a sin business. Back into, I don't know if that works as well, but it's like, okay, I can check that off.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a great set of, just this one slide alone, right? It's such a great set of tools for a QOZB to go, okay, am I here? 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 A lot of times these qualify if your intent is based on and backed by the true spirit of the incentive, right? To support a community that's socioeconomically challenged, right? In a lot of cases, when we do a strategy call or something, right, or we're talking to somebody, the rub or the friction happens when somebody's trying to like fit a square peg into a round hole, right? It's like, but if you start with true and genuine intention in committing finance and capital to an area that needs it, right, that's in these zones, a lot of these take care of themselves, right? So just interesting to share this, and yeah, Shawn, I would definitely say that if I were diagnosing your next step, I would say go to the compliance session, ask them, tee this up, and have a really precise question about it, right? Like, this is what I want to do. It centers around this part of the asset test. Am I missing anything, right? And let those guys go to town, you know? And it may be that they have to get on a one-on-one call with you or something, but that's the nice thing, is that at least then you'll have some perspective, you know? You could even ask it in the forum, right? And tag Gordon and Patrick and Paul and all those awesome experts, and they might even chime in before the compliance zone call itself.
And I actually connected Shawn to Brett directly, and he's
Sweet.
a compliance zone moderator.
There you go. There you go. So that's a great connection there. Nita, is this helpful for you too? I love just
Yeah.
like reiterating. I think it's helpful for me. We're a QOZB. I need to remember this stuff. I need to set everything up properly. So it's just a great reminder.
Yep.
Did you have something, Nita, that you wanted to share or that you had questions about that you wanted to process through?
Oh, about what I'm working on?
Sure. Or not. It's
Well,
okay. I wanted
I'd
to make it
love
available.
to. So I have gone through several, well, yeah, so I've got 5 minutes.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go for it.
Okay. So I've gone through like the gazillion time my PowerPoint and readjusted and stuff. So I'm part of a team that's developing a community development model using drones as a tool. And therefore, I've been on this journey, this OZB journey, opportunity zones, and learning about that. And here recently been on this drone tech journey. One reason that prompted me was I applied for a small grant through the American Heart Association. They liked the idea, and their grant was empowering underserved communities. And so I had been talking with this drone pilot for a few years now, and he's got a nonprofit, and then COVID hit. And so he didn't want to really pursue his programs. So anyway, I'm working on an angle of whether or not having an office in an opportunity zone or how that would all work, because it's sort of like if you're familiar with McKinsey Group or Bain, you outsource a lot of your research work and a lot of your consulting with individuals who do their own thing, but then they've also got employees, but not anybody comes into the office anymore. So it's kind of tricky evaluating like what our primary assets would be intellectual property. So trademarking, copyrights, our training materials, because we'll be training the folks to fly. And then we're also looking at organizing and contracting with, say, law enforcement or a hospital or a Walmart to build out this drone ready community that gives access to the community, as well as it has economic value for all the mom and pops and the big box retail and the hospital, and it connects with surveillance and law enforcement. So it is very exciting.
It's really cool. So are you buying the drones? Are you renting the drones? Are you training? Are you educating? Like it's all sort of a training center, it sounds like.
So our first primary role will be training remote pilots, and we'll partner with a full stack drone partner who does all the hardware, software, and infrastructure.
Okay.
And so we'll rely on them to do that piece. So we'll contract with them to do that piece.
Okay.
We'll contract with the hospital to do like medical supply delivery. We're looking heavily into the drone deliveries, both on the healthcare side, the fast food delivery, because drone deliveries are probably going to replace Uber Eats drivers and Instacart. Yeah.
And my favorite movie is coming true, Terminator 2.
I know.
Not that I want the apocalypse at the end of it, but
I know.
or any of it. I don't want any of it to happen. So Nita, I think that the asset tests are your homework assignment too.
I think so.
Yeah, and what I'll tell you, because I have experience, obviously setting up a remote company, right, in an opportunity as a QOZB.
Yeah.
There's two like pieces that are most important. One is like an Emily. Emily is able to and committed to working more than 50% of her time in a opportunity zone, which is near her house. Okay. So she tracks that and reports it. So if you're going to consult or contract with anyone, as long as you can offset and have that, because remember, these are and tests. You have to hit all, these have to all happen, right? So the 50% gross income, trade or business within an OZ, 40% of intangible property utilized in trade or business happening in an OZ. Like those are first three are going to be really key points for you, right? You don't worry about 4 and 5. I think you're already good. you're not a sin business, and you're not talking about like and Shawn may not even be fitting in this model because he's talking about insurance now, not necessarily these non-qualified financial, definitions. So I'll start with one thing that I think will help, and that is if you're able to lease space inside of an opportunity zone, which we do. So I mentioned Emily, but I'm part of this equation too. So our office is in a zone, right? That lease, if you can get the landlord to write a agreement, standard lease agreement, the difference is that it has a little bit of language about opportunity zone, and it also has a visual, contractually obligated 10-year lease term. So it doesn't mean you're not agreeing to 10 years of lease. Anyone can opt out at any time, but the value of that lease is now, and you have a little percentage, a little raise in percentage each year. The combined value of all those 10 years now is what I'm showing here on this asset test, your 70-30 bad assets. Okay. So you lump in, like our lease is worth $89,000. So on paper, we've got $89,000 in our good asset store. That's the 70%. All right. All the other property and things that we utilize, right? Internet service provider, monthly software bills, right? Those are all things that are outside of the zone that are in my bad asset store, but those are monthly payments. So it's 89,000 to like $100 in, in internet cost, right? Okay. So you're offsetting all of that. And it's just sort of a nice way for an operating business that runs remotely to have a big, good asset store right off the bat. Yeah. Right. So that's one for number one. And number two is really about, making a commitment and having your contractors track, and sometimes you have to look for contractors in the zone, right? So if your drone company is a big part of your contracting, maybe there's a unique way to put it into your bad asset class. So like if you contract them and it costs, say your lease is $100,000 and you pay them $10,000, right? You're still offsetting your costs enough, right?
Yeah. So I was going to say, so most of my consultants, my team of consultants are 1099 and they work from home, or a lot of them work from home or wherever and I'm the CEO. So if I work physically in the space that is an opportunity zone that has a 10-year lease, then I think that kind of takes care of that, but I'm not sure about the 1099, like I'm adding to my team. So, but they right now, and as a W-2 employee, I could say, okay, you got to spend a certain amount of time with me at my space. Exactly. As a 1099, I probably couldn't get them to do that.
Right.
You can't make them do it, but you can ask them to. I work at a coffee shop, so I don't have a space that I'm paying for, but I work in a coffee shop that's near me. So you can ask them, and if they find it to be a desirable position they really want, usually they'll agree to that.
Co-working space, coffee shop. I mean, Emily reports all that and tracks it, and we then have our our audit trail intact. So that's. But have that conversation with people. Emily is amazing, and happens to love the place that she goes to, and it's not a forced deal for her. Okay. And so that's another way to do that. But definitely have that conversation with your 1099 people. You working in the zone. I mean, I am a CEO, and I work 75% plus out of our office. Right. Gotcha. So that helps offset if one of our 1099 people can't. Right. It actually offsets a handful because they rarely are working as many hours as I am too. Right. So I would say study this. Right. Yeah. Come up with some questions, bring it to the compliance guys, have them run it to ground. And ultimately, as we go through these processes, I also want people to be able to get into strategy calls with Ashley and his team, because it's not you know, it's very affordable to go through and like have a series of questions. But what I saw early on in the strategy calls was like people coming in with like we're having this conversation today, and then they're like not getting a whole lot of the value because it's just going over some of the rules and, you know, overviews. Whereas if you came in with like, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, then you get a much more cleaner, more articulate answer to, you know, what you may or may not be able to do. Right. So that's great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Helpful. Yeah.
Yep. Very helpful.